I noticed something was wrong with my son long before anyone else did. Not because I'm a doctor, not because I have any medical training, just because I'm his father. And a father knows his child, even when that child is 53 years old and standing 6 feet tall in his own kitchen, pretending everything is fine. I noticed it in the way he walked, slower than usual, heavier somehow, like each step cost him something. I noticed it in the way he laughed, a half-second late, like his body had to remind itself that something was funny. I noticed it in his eyes, which used to be sharp and dark and quick, and were now distant, clouded, like looking at someone through frosted glass. But every time I mentioned it, he waved me off. "Dad, I'm just tired. Work has been brutal. Dad, I'm fine. Stop worrying. Dad, you're doing that thing again." That thing. He said it with a small smile, affectionate enough that I never pushed further. That thing meant I was being an old man, overprotective, reading shadows where there was only light. So I told myself he was right. I told myself I was projecting. I told myself that men his age get tired, that life gets heavy, that 53 is not the same as 25, and sometimes the body slows down without any sinister reason behind it. I told myself all of that, and I almost believed it. Almost. Before I go any further, I want to say something to everyone watching this right now. If you've ever had a moment where something felt wrong, and everyone around you told you to let it go, this story is for you. I want to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below. A city, a country, a small town, it doesn't matter. I genuinely want to know how far this reaches, because what happened in my family, it shouldn't happen in anyone else's. If this story moves you, if it makes you feel something, please like this video and subscribe. It costs you nothing, and it might mean everything to someone who needed to hear this today. Now let me take you back to the beginning. My son's name is Daniel. He is, and I say this without exaggeration, one of the finest human beings I have ever known. I know every father says something like that, but with Daniel it was never just pride talking. It was observation. 40 years of watching him move through the world with a kind of quiet, steady decency that most people spend their whole lives chasing. He worked in logistics management. Not glamorous, but he was good at it. The kind of person who remembered the names of every warehouse worker on his floor, who showed up early and stayed late not to impress anyone, but because that's just how he was built. His employees trusted him. His supervisors respected him. And his family, we loved him with the kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself because it's just always there, like furniture, solid, permanent. He married Christine 17 years ago. I want to be careful how I describe Christine because I don't want to paint her as a villain from the very start. That's not honest. The truth is, for the first several years, I had no strong feelings about her either way. She was pleasant, organized, the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday and always brought the right wine to dinner. She kept a clean house. She was efficient in a way that sometimes felt more corporate than warm, but I told myself that was just her personality. Not everyone expresses love the same way. She and Daniel seemed happy, or rather, they seemed functional, which I told myself was the same thing. Maybe it is, for some people. Maybe I was comparing their marriage to my own, which was 31 years with a woman named Ruth, who passed away 8 years ago, and nothing has ever measured up to that benchmark, so perhaps my standards were unreasonable. But there were small things, small, easy to dismiss things. Christine managed everything: the finances, the schedules, the social calendar, the grocery lists, even Daniel's medical appointments. She would call the doctor's office herself, attend the appointments with him, and then relay information back to the family in her own words. At the time, I thought she was just organized, efficient, thorough, the kind of partner who takes care of logistics so her husband doesn't have to. Looking back, I understand it differently now. Their daughter is named Maya. She is 19 years old, and she is, in many ways, the quiet center of this entire story. Maya is not a loud person. She never has been. Even as a little girl, she was the one sitting slightly apart from the group at birthday parties, watching, taking everything in with those wide, careful eyes of hers. Not shy exactly, just observant, like she was always taking notes, always filing things away for later. She and I have always had a particular closeness. I think it's because we're similar that way. We both notice things. We both carry those things quietly for a long time before we speak. We would sit together on my porch on Sunday afternoons and not say much, just drink tea and watch the yard, and it was one of the most comfortable silences I've ever known. When Daniel started declining, Maya noticed too. I could see it in her face at family dinners. The way she watched her father push food around his plate. The way her eyes tracked every time he reached for the table to steady himself. She noticed, but like me, she said nothing. Because in that house, you didn't say things like that out loud. Christine had a way of managing conversations, redirecting them, smoothing over concern before it could take root and grow into questions. I didn't fully recognize that pattern then. I do now. The symptoms, when I try to list them, seem almost mundane in isolation. That's the thing about this kind of slow erosion. Each moment, on its own, is explainable, reasonable, easy to wave away. It's only when you lay them all out together, side by side, that the shape of something dark begins to emerge. Fatigue. Daniel had always been energetic, the kind of man who was up at 6 every morning without an alarm. But over the past year and a half, he was sleeping 10, 11 hours and still looking exhausted. His eyes were perpetually heavy. He would fall asleep on the couch at 7 in the evening. Confusion. Not dramatic confusion, not forgetting his own name. Small confusion. Losing his train of thought mid-sentence. Struggling to recall words he'd used his whole life. Calling me twice in one evening to ask the same question, with no memory of the first call. Weight loss. Gradual, but noticeable. His face went from full to hollowed in a way that no diet explained, because he wasn't on a diet. He was eating, Christine made sure of that, and yet something wasn't staying with him. Trembling. Slight, intermittent, mostly in his hands. He tried to hide it. I saw it anyway. And mood. A flatness that settled over him like a slow fog. He was never a man of dramatic emotion, but he had always been engaged, present, curious. That spark was dimming. When I told him funny stories he used to love, he would smile, but it didn't reach anywhere. It was a surface smile, a polite gesture. He saw doctors, several of them. Christine handled those appointments, as I mentioned. The reports that came back to us through her were reassuring. Stress, burnout, possible vitamin deficiency, nothing alarming. They were working on it. He was taking supplements now. Everything was under control. And because she said it with such calm authority, we believed her. I believed her. The vitamins became a kind of fixture in the household narrative. Large brown bottles lined up on the kitchen counter like soldiers. Christine mentioned them often, almost proudly. He's been so good about taking his supplements. The doctor recommended a specific regimen. We're really committed to being thorough about this. I saw those bottles every Sunday when I came for dinner. I never thought twice about them. Why would I? They were vitamins. They were on the kitchen counter. They had labels. They looked exactly like what they were supposed to be. Or so I thought. It was a Thursday when the text came, 3:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I've looked back at it so many times that it's burned into my memory now. Those blue digital numbers on my phone screen, sharp in the darkness of my bedroom. I'm a light sleeper, have been since Ruth passed. The phone buzzing on my nightstand pulled me up from a dream I can't remember now, and I reached for it automatically. The way you do, half asleep, squinting against the light. It was from Maya. The first thing I noticed was the time, 3:47. Maya was not a night owl. She was not someone who sent casual late-night messages. The time alone made my chest tighten before I even read the words. Then I read them. Grandpa, don't come Sunday. Something isn't right. I need you to look inside Dad's vitamin bottles before you come again. The big brown ones on the counter. Please. I know this sounds strange. Just look. Look before Sunday. It's important. Please don't tell Mom I texted you. I read it 4 times. The first time, I didn't understand it. The second time, I felt confusion. The third time, something cold moved through me. The fourth time, I sat up in bed. I didn't text her back right away. I sat in the dark for a long time. My bedroom was quiet. The house was quiet. Outside, not even a car passing. Just that particular silence of the very early morning that feels heavier than regular silence. More serious, like the world is holding its breath. I thought about what the message could mean. My first instinct, I'll be honest with you, was to dismiss it. Maya was 19. She was young. She lived in that house and absorbed whatever tension was in that house. Maybe she'd overheard something and misunderstood. Maybe she was anxious or going through something herself. Kids that age can catastrophize. They can see patterns that aren't there. But even as I thought all of this, I heard another voice underneath it. Quieter, steadier. The voice that had been watching my son lose himself for a year and a half while everyone told me it was stress. Just look, that voice said. What is the harm in just looking? I didn't sleep again that night. I lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and let my mind go where it needed to go, even to the uncomfortable places. I thought about Christine, about the way she managed information, about the appointments I'd never attended, about the reports that always came filtered through her, smooth and simplified, and just reassuring enough to keep questions at bay. I thought about 17 years of small moments I had categorized as personality quirks rather than patterns. I thought about my son's hands trembling around a coffee cup at Easter. I thought about the look on Maya's face every time her father stumbled over a sentence. And I thought about a 19-year-old girl, awake at 3:47 in the morning, frightened enough to reach out to her grandfather in the dark rather than anyone else. Frightened enough to warn me not to come. Frightened enough to beg me not to tell her mother. Children don't do that without a reason. Children don't lie about something like that. Not Maya. Not my Maya, with her careful eyes and her quiet way of carrying things. By 5 in the morning, I had made a decision. I was going over there. Not Sunday. Friday morning, when I knew Christine had her weekly hair appointment, the one standing commitment she never canceled under any circumstances. I knew Daniel worked from home on Fridays. I knew he would let me in without question. I would bring coffee, I would make it look like a normal visit, and I would look inside those bottles. I want to pause here for a moment and tell you what that drive over felt like on Friday morning, because I think it matters. I've driven that route to Daniel's house hundreds of times. I know every turn, every landmark, the gas station at the corner of Millbrook and 5th, the church with the broken letter on its sign that no one has fixed in 2 years, the oak tree so old and wide at the entrance to their street that you have to slow down because the roots have buckled the pavement. That morning, I barely saw any of it. My hands were on the wheel and my eyes were on the road, but my mind was somewhere else entirely, moving through possibilities, testing them, discarding some, returning to others. The rational part of me was still trying to find an innocent explanation. Maybe Maya had seen something she misidentified. Maybe there had been a medication mix-up, something benign, something the doctor already knew about and was managing. Maybe this was all going to resolve itself into a conversation over coffee and a relieved laugh. But underneath the rational part, there was something older and quieter that was no longer pretending. That something had already arrived at a conclusion. It was just waiting for the rest of me to catch up. Daniel answered the door in his pajamas, which told me everything about how his mornings were now. The man who used to be showered, dressed, and caffeinated by 6:30 was standing in flannel pants at 9 in the morning, hair uncombed, eyes carrying that familiar fog. He smiled when he saw me, A real smile, not the surface kind. Whatever else was happening to him, he still had that. "Dad, what are you doing here? Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," I said. "I was in the area, brought you coffee." He let me in without another question. We sat at the kitchen table and talked about nothing in particular. His work, my garden, a sports team we both followed with mild enthusiasm. He was engaged, or trying to be. I watched him carefully but quietly, the way you watch something fragile, not wanting to disturb it. The vitamin bottles were exactly where they always were, lined up on the counter, 6 of them, various sizes, all with those official-looking labels. Vitamins and supplements, everything responsible and organized. We talked for maybe 40 minutes. Then Daniel excused himself to use the bathroom, said he'd be right back. I sat alone in that kitchen for 60, maybe 90 seconds. That was long enough. I stood up slowly, crossed to the counter. My hands were perfectly steady, which surprised me a little. I had expected them to shake. But something had gone very calm in me. The kind of calm that isn't peace, the kind that's the other side of fear, when you've moved through it and come out somewhere clear and cold on the other side. I picked up the first bottle, opened it, tipped it slightly. It looked normal. Capsules, the right color, nothing unusual. The second bottle, same. The third bottle was larger than the others. It was labeled as a magnesium supplement, the large kind, with the big capsules that are slightly awkward to swallow. I opened it. At first glance, it looked normal too. But something made me look closer. Something made me tip one of the capsules out into my palm. It was the weight. These capsules were lighter than they should have been. Much lighter. I've taken magnesium supplements before. I know what they feel like. These felt almost hollow. I looked at the capsule in my palm for a long moment. Then very carefully, I twisted it. It came apart. And inside, there was no magnesium. There was no supplement powder at all. Inside was a small, folded piece of plastic, and inside that plastic was a fine, pale powder that was not white the way vitamin powder is white. It was a different shade, slightly off, more ivory than white. I stood there. My kitchen, my son's kitchen, 9:15 on a Friday morning. I held that capsule in my hand, and I did not move for what felt like a very long time. I want to describe what happened inside me in that moment, because it wasn't what I expected. I had spent the whole drive over preparing for shock, preparing for the wave of it, the dizziness, the surge of emotion. I had braced for it. What came instead was not shock. It was recognition, like a key turning in a lock that had been stuck for a year and a half, like something finally clicking into the position it had been almost reaching for months. Everything I had cataloged, every symptom, every dismissed concern, every smoothed-over conversation, it all shifted and realigned around this one small object in my hand. Not shock, recognition. And underneath the recognition, something very, very quiet and very, very cold. I carefully folded the capsule back together. I placed it back in the bottle. I closed the bottle. I set it back exactly where it had been, in its exact position in the line. Then I took out my phone and photographed every bottle on that counter, front and back, every label. Then I sat back down at the kitchen table, and when Daniel came back from the bathroom, I finished my coffee and I talked to him about the sports team for another 15 minutes, and I did not let a single thing show on my face. When I left, I hugged him longer than usual. He didn't comment on it. I sat in my car in his driveway for a long time before I drove away. I called Maya from a parking lot 2 miles from the house. She answered on the first ring. She'd been waiting. "Grandpa," her voice was so young, so strained. I could hear how long she'd been carrying this. "I looked," I said. A silence, then a shaking exhale. "I found one a few weeks ago," she said very quietly. "I dropped one and it cracked open. I thought I was wrong. I thought I was seeing things. So I looked at a few more, and she stopped. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to tell. I was scared of what it meant. I was scared of being wrong. I was scared of being right. You weren't wrong, I told her. Another silence. What do we do? She whispered. I handle it, I said. You did the right thing, Maya. You did exactly the right thing. Now let me take care of the rest. I want to be honest about what followed because I think it's important to understand the full picture. I did not go to the police immediately. I know some people will feel strongly that I should have, and I've wrestled with that. But my first call was to Daniel's physician directly, bypassing Christine entirely for the first time. I explained that I had concerns about Daniel's supplements and requested an urgent appointment. The physician, to his credit, took me seriously. I also called my younger sister's son, who is an attorney. Not a dramatic phone call, just a quiet, factual conversation. I told him what I had found. He told me to document everything and said very little beyond that, which is how he operates when something serious crosses his desk. I photographed everything again from memory. I wrote down a timeline of symptoms, dates, observations going back 18 months. I wrote it by hand in my kitchen that Friday afternoon, and I did it slowly and carefully because I wanted it to be accurate, not emotional, accurate. Then I waited for Sunday. Christine arrived before Daniel that Sunday, which was unusual. She came in with groceries and that particular organized energy she carried everywhere, unpacking bags with efficient movements, already planning the afternoon. She seemed in good spirits, relaxed even. I watched her move around that kitchen, and I thought about all the Sundays before this one. Daniel came in from the garage a few minutes later. He looked tired, as always. He kissed my cheek. He poured himself a glass of water. He reached automatically toward the supplement bottles on the counter, the habitual gesture of someone following a routine they'd been following for months. Actually, Daniel, I said very calmly, I need to speak with you both. Can we sit down? Christine turned. Something moved across her face. Not guilt, not yet. More like alertness. The subtle shift of someone who senses a change in weather. Of course, she said lightly. What's going on? We sat at the kitchen table, the three of us. I had been at that table hundreds of times. I knew every scratch in the wood. I looked at my son first. How are you really feeling? Not the version for company. How are you actually feeling? He looked slightly surprised, then something gentled in his expression. Honestly, Dad, not great. I'm really tired all the time. I keep thinking it'll get better, but... He glanced at Christine, a small automatic deference. We're working on it. I know, I said. I turned to Christine. I opened Daniel's supplement bottles yesterday morning, I said. My voice was level. I had rehearsed keeping it level. The large magnesium bottle, I opened one of the capsules. The change in her face was instantaneous, and it was the change of someone who already knows exactly what was found. Not confusion, not curiosity, not the innocent bewilderment of a person confronted with something unexpected. It was the face of someone watching a wall fall. What are you talking about? She said, but her voice had lost its ease. I think you know what I'm talking about, I said very quietly. Daniel was looking between us. What's happening? Dad, what did you find? I told him what I had found, calmly, factually, without embellishment. I watched his face as I spoke, and I watched the fog in his eyes shift into something sharper, something that was struggling to surface through whatever had been dulling him. He looked at his wife. Christine said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "This is insane. This is completely insane. I don't know what you think you found, but..." I photographed them, I said. All the bottles. I've already spoken to Daniel's doctor. We have an appointment Tuesday morning, and I've documented 18 months of symptoms. The room was very quiet. Christine, Daniel said. His voice was low, different from any tone I'd heard from him in a long time. Something underneath the fog, something recognizing itself. What did he find? She looked at him. I watched her calculate. I watched her try to find the angle that worked, and then I watched the calculation fail. She started to cry. Not the open, immediate tears of someone releasing guilt. The tight, reluctant tears of someone who has run out of options. There is a difference, and I noticed the difference. The truth came out in pieces over the next hour. Not cleanly, not completely, with justifications woven through it that I will not repeat here, because they don't deserve the weight of being repeated. But the core of it came out. She had been adding something to his capsules for months. Not poison, not something dramatic. A sedative compound, the kind that doesn't require a prescription in certain forms, that builds in the system over time and produces exactly the symptoms Daniel had been living with for 18 months. Fatigue, cognitive slowing, emotional flatness, weight loss. She had reasons, or she called them reasons, financial reasons, control reasons, reasons that twisted and turned back on themselves the more she tried to explain them and only grew uglier in the light. Daniel sat at that table and did not speak for a very long time. When he finally looked at his wife, it was with an expression I will carry with me for the rest of my life. Not rage, not the eruption I might have expected from discovering something like this. Something quieter than that, and in some ways, more devastating. He looked at her like he was seeing her clearly for the very first time. Like every year they had spent together was rearranging itself in his memory into its true shape. And he was watching it happen, and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. "I think you need to leave," he said, very quietly, very evenly. "Daniel, please. I think you need to leave now." I am not going to tell you that what followed was simple or clean, because it wasn't. Families never divide cleanly. There are always people who refuse to believe, or who soften the truth because believing it fully is more than they can bear. Christine has siblings who rallied to her side, who called me controlling, who suggested I had manufactured or misread what I found. There were phone calls that turned heated. There were family dinners that dissolved into silence when certain subjects arose. Some people accused me of being too harsh, of not giving Christine a chance to explain before going to the doctor, the attorney, the documentation, of treating my own daughter-in-law like a suspect before the evidence was fully examined. I listened to those people. I have continued to listen to them. I think it is worth sitting with the discomfort of the question they're asking, even when I believe the answer clearly justifies what I did. Would I do it differently? No. But I understand why the question gets asked. Maya was at school when the confrontation happened. I had not told her it was coming. When she found out what had occurred, she drove home and sat in the kitchen with her father for several hours. I don't know everything that was said between them. I don't think it's mine to know. But she called me that evening, and her voice was steadier than I expected. Older somehow. "I should have said something sooner," she told me. "You were 19, I said, "and you said something when it mattered." I was scared. "I know, but you still did it." There was a long pause on the line. "Is he going to be okay?" she asked. "Yes," I said, and I meant it. Daniel had a full workup done over the following weeks. The doctor confirmed what we had suspected. There was a substance in his system that shouldn't have been there, one that metabolizes slowly and had been accumulating for an extended period. With the source removed, his body began clearing it naturally. It would take time, months, not weeks, but the prognosis was good. The first Sunday I went to his house after Christine was gone, he opened the door and his eyes were clearer than they'd been in at least a year. Still tired, still healing, but clearer. He made coffee. We sat on the back porch because the weather was turning and you could feel the first proper edge of autumn in the air, that specific quality of light that is both warm and melancholy at the same time. We didn't talk about Christine, not that day. There will be time for all of that, for whatever processing and reckoning looks like for him, and it will look different for him than it does for me, because he lived inside that marriage and I only observed it from the outside. What I know is this: Trust is not a given. It's a thing you build and maintain and verify. And even in the people closest to you, even in the relationships that should be safest, it can be eroded quietly, gradually, in ways that are designed specifically not to be noticed. I think about all the Sundays I sat at that kitchen table and looked at those bottles and thought nothing of them. All the times I deferred to Christine's calm authority. All the times I told myself I was overthinking. I think about a 19-year-old girl awake in the dark at 3:47 in the morning, carrying something enormous and frightening all by herself, reaching out to the only person she thought might actually listen. I don't take that lightly. I will never take that lightly. My son is better now, slowly, incrementally, in the way that real recovery always works, not dramatically, but genuinely. He laughs at things again, and the laugh arrives when it should. His hands are steady, his eyes are present. He is finding his way back to himself, and watching it is one of the most quietly profound things I have experienced since losing Ruth. Maya finished her second year of university. She called me last week on a Tuesday for no particular reason, just to talk. We talked for nearly an hour. She is going to be all right, more than all right. She is going to be remarkable. I sit on my porch most evenings now when the light is right, and I let myself simply be grateful. For the text that came in the dark, for the instinct I almost ignored, for the granddaughter who was brave enough to reach out when she didn't know if anyone would believe her. And I sit with the lesson of it, which I carry now like a stone in my pocket, solid and constant. Pay attention to the quiet ones. Listen to the people who don't usually speak. And when someone you love begins to disappear in front of you, trust what you see with your own eyes, even when every voice around you is saying you're imagining it. You are not always imagining it. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply look. If something in this story stayed with you, I'd be glad to know. Drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, what you're carrying, what this brought up for you. These stories matter because your responses remind me that none of us are really alone in the things we go through. If you haven't already, please subscribe. Share this with someone who might need to hear it today. And thank you, sincerely, for sitting with me through all of this. Take care of the people you love, and pay attention. Always pay attention.